I used to believe there were some things a person could survive, and some things they simply couldn't. Losing money, losing a job, even losing a home. I thought those were temporary wounds. But the night I opened my bedroom door and saw my wife with another man in our bed, I discovered there was a different kind of pain. The kind that makes every sound disappear and leaves only one thought pounding inside your head. How long have they been lying to me? I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the two people I trusted most, while my entire 10-year marriage collapsed in less than 10 seconds. My name is Daniel, and until that night, I thought I had an ordinary life. I worked long hours as a construction manager, paid our bills, maintained our house, and did everything I could to make my wife, Emily, happy. We weren't rich, but we had built a comfortable life together. At least, that's what I believed. Over the previous few months, Emily had started changing. She became protective of her phone, started coming home late, and suddenly had endless reasons to leave the house. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, she'd smile and tell me I was imagining things. I wanted to believe her, so I did. The first rail warning came 3 weeks before that night. I had returned home early because a project had been canceled. Emily wasn't expecting me. When I walked into the kitchen, she nearly dropped her phone. She quickly turned the screen away and told me it was just a message from work. I didn't question her. But later that evening, I noticed she deleted almost everything from her phone. I remember standing in the bathroom that night, staring at myself in the mirror and wondering why my own wife suddenly felt like a stranger. Still, I convinced myself that marriage meant trusting someone even when your instincts screamed otherwise. Then came Thursday. I had told Emily I'd be working until midnight. But around 9:30 p.m., my supervisor called and said I could leave early. I remember feeling strangely happy. I stopped at a restaurant and picked up her favorite dinner. I even bought a small dessert because she'd had a difficult week. I drove home thinking I'd surprise her. I imagined us sitting at the kitchen table, laughing about something stupid, like we used to. The house was dark when I arrived. I unlocked the front door quietly and immediately noticed something strange. There were men's shoes near the hallway. Not mine. Black leather shoes, expensive looking, placed casually beside the wall. My heart began beating faster. I called Emily's name, but there was no answer. Then I heard something upstairs. A muffled voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew there was someone else in the house. I climbed the stairs slowly. Every step felt heavier than the one before it. When I reached our bedroom door, I saw that it was slightly open. Light spilled through the gap. I pushed the door, and everything inside me broke. Emily was sitting on our bed beside another man. The man looked at me. Emily looked at me. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The dinner bag slipped from my hand and crashed onto the floor. The dessert container rolled beneath the dresser. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven, as if I were running. "Daniel," Emily whispered. I stared at the man. "Who is he?" She didn't answer. I looked at the stranger again. "I asked you a question." Emily finally stood. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I shouted. "Explain why another man is in our bedroom?" The stranger started putting on his jacket. Something about his calmness made my anger explode. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't frightened. He looked almost annoyed that I had interrupted them. "Daniel, stop," Emily said. I looked at her. "How long?" She lowered her eyes. "How long, Emily?" Her silence answered me. I felt something inside my chest collapse. The man walked toward the door. I stepped in front of him. "You're not leaving." "Daniel," Emily said again, her voice trembling now. The man looked directly into my eyes. "Move." That single word changed everything. I wish I could say I walked away. I wish I could say I called the police, filed for divorce, and handled everything like a calm adult. But I didn't. I lost control. I grabbed the man's jacket and shoved him backward. He stumbled against the wall. Emily screamed. He pushed me away, and I pushed him back harder. A picture frame fell from the wall and shattered on the floor. Then he said something I'll never forget. "She was going to leave you anyway." I froze. I looked at Emily. Her face told me there was more. "What does he mean?" I asked. Emily began crying. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Ask your wife about the house," he said. I stared at him. "What house?" He smiled bitterly. Then he walked out. I turned toward Emily, completely confused. "What house?" She said nothing. I stepped closer. "Emily, what is he talking about?" She finally looked at me and whispered 6 words that made the entire night even worse. The house was never really ours. And that's when I realized the affair wasn't the worst secret she'd been hiding from me. The house was never really ours. Those words kept repeating inside my head. I stared at Emily, waiting for her to explain, but she couldn't even look at me. I felt like I was standing inside someone else's life. "What does that mean?" I asked. Emily wiped her tears and finally admitted that the house had originally belonged to her father. Years earlier, he had transferred it into a private company controlled by the family. Emily had never told me because she wanted to keep the property separate from our marriage. But that wasn't all. The man I'd caught with her, Mark, wasn't just her lover. He was her father's business partner. And he had been pressuring Emily to divorce me so they could take control of the property together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you cheated on me because of a house?" I asked. Emily shook her head. It wasn't only the house. She confessed that Mark had convinced her I was planning to leave her after my promotion at work. He had shown her messages taken completely out of context and planted doubts in her mind. Slowly, he had turned our marriage into something she no longer trusted. But then Emily admitted something that made my blood run cold. She had already signed documents transferring part of the property. She had planned to leave me the following week. The affair wasn't an accident or a single mistake. She had been building another life while I was still trying to save ours. I walked downstairs without saying another word. I didn't want to hear another explanation. I wanted to leave, breathe, and think. But when I reached the front door, I saw Mark standing outside. He had apparently been waiting for me. He looked at me and said, "You should have listened when I told you to move." I asked him why he had returned. He stepped closer and said, "Because you don't understand what you've walked into." Then he revealed that the property wasn't worth what I thought. There was a massive loan attached to it, and if the transfer went through, the debt would become my problem too. Suddenly, the affair looked less like betrayal and more like a carefully planned trap. I grabbed my phone and called the police because I was afraid the situation would turn violent again. Mark laughed when he saw me dialing. "Go ahead," he said. "Tell them what happened." When the officers arrived, they listened to everyone separately. I admitted that I had pushed Mark during the confrontation. I didn't lie or try to hide it. Mark showed them a bruise on his arm and claimed I had attacked him without provocation. Emily stayed silent. I knew immediately that I was in trouble. At the station, everything moved faster than I expected. Because Mark had injuries and witnesses had heard the argument, I was arrested for assault. Sitting in that cold room, I kept thinking about the dinner I brought home. It was still in the kitchen when they took me away. My wife's favorite meal, untouched on the counter, while I sat behind a locked door because I'd allowed one moment of rage to destroy whatever was left of my freedom. The next morning, Emily visited me. She looked exhausted. She said Mark had disappeared and wasn't answering her calls. Then she told me something even more shocking. She had discovered that Mark had forged several documents connected to the property. He had been using her father's company to hide financial problems, and he had planned to make Emily responsible for them. She finally understood that she'd been manipulated, but when she apologized, I felt nothing. An apology couldn't erase the lies, the affair, or the night I'd spent in a cell. I eventually accepted responsibility for what I'd done. I had lost control, and there were consequences. My lawyer negotiated a deal that kept me from serving a long prison sentence, but I still spent time in jail and had to deal with the criminal record that followed. When I returned home, Emily was gone. She had moved into a small apartment and filed for divorce. The house was eventually sold to settle the financial mess Mark had created. In the end, neither of us got what we thought we were fighting for. Months passed. My life became painfully quiet. I found a smaller apartment, changed jobs, and stopped answering calls from people who wanted to hear the story. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, but nobody could understand what it felt like to walk into your bedroom and realize the person sleeping beside you had been living a completely different life. One evening, Emily came to see me. She stood outside my apartment holding a small box. Inside were photographs from our marriage, our first vacation, our wedding, the house before everything changed. She apologized again. This time, I listened. She said she regretted everything and wished she could go back to the person she had been before Mark entered her life. I looked at those photographs and realized something painful. I didn't hate her anymore. I simply didn't know her. Before leaving, Emily asked me one question. Do you regret that night? I thought about the arrest, the courtroom, the money I'd lost, the embarrassment, the months of rebuilding my life. Then I thought about the man I'd been before that night. The man who trusted blindly, ignored every warning sign, and believed love meant accepting every lie. I regret losing control. I told her. I regret giving you the power to destroy my future. But do I regret finally seeing the truth? I shook my head. No. Emily lowered her eyes. I continued. That night showed me who you really were. I just wish I had understood it before I destroyed myself trying to hold on to you. She left without another word. A year later, I was finally beginning to feel like myself again. I had learned that betrayal doesn't always destroy you in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it happens slowly, through unanswered questions, hidden messages, strange excuses, and little lies you choose to ignore because believing the truth hurts too much. I still carry the consequences of that night. I can't erase the arrest. I can't erase the divorce. I can't get back the money, the house, or the years I thought I'd spend growing old with Emily. But I also learned something I wish I'd known sooner. When someone betrays you, your anger may feel justified, but one reckless decision can make you pay a price for someone else's betrayal. I lost control that night. She lost my trust. And in the end, we both lost the life we thought we were going to have.